This episode of Super Pulp Science is brought to you by Chadwick Ginther, author of the Thunder Road Trilogy and the upcoming Graveyard Mind. Available this July wherever books are sold, but you might be able to get it early at FanQuest June 23rd and 24th at the Red River College Exchange District campus. Come to FanQuest, meet Chadwick, and see his latest work. Go to fanquestcon.com for more information.
Attention, citizens! It's time for Super Pulp Science!
This is Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. I'm here with my long-suffering co-host, Justin Curry.
Back again.
Back again. You can't leave, actually. It's like the Hotel California. And we're here with a very special guest, someone that we've talked about many times on this podcast, Mr. Chadwick Ginther. Welcome,
thanks
Chadwick.
for having me.
You're welcome. In preparation for the podcast, I wore my American Gods shirt, my Neil Gaiman shirt, because
fine shirt.
Chadwick is the Neil Gaiman of Winnipeg, for sure. He is.
That's not going to come back to haunt me.
I hope you guys have a Twitter fight over this. But you do mythic fiction.
I do.
You're a writer of novels, and you are a writer of comics now. And the one thing that I really appreciate about you, Chadwick, is that you don't just show up at the keyboard and get your books out. You also show up at shows and get the word out. So we're going to talk to you. Yeah, we're going to put you on the hot seat about how we can become novelists. Because we've decided to leave comics behind, right, Curry?
Really?
Yeah.
I like comics.
No, you're out. You're
I like
done.
comics too.
Just books. Just books now, and Chadwick's going to teach us how. Right?
Sure.
Okay, so we also did something that we've never done before, which is we asked the interwebs some questions to ask you. So I've got one here for you that says, basically, how do you combat the feeling that you're an imposter?
Well, combating the feeling is a lot harder than actually recognizing you're feeling it. I didn't know. For the longest time, I didn't know about imposter syndrome as a thing. I just thought, why am I doing this? Why am I still struggling? I haven't sold anything yet.
Right.
But right from the early days, when I was building my routine and just trying to get words on the page, actually, I still have a framed image of Nick Cave on my office door that I cut out of some music magazine, and there's a quote on there from him that says, "Writer's block is a profound lack of self-confidence, and I've never felt that." And so I'm like, I am going...
Oh, God.
and I'm like, I don't know that I believe this, but I want it to be
You
true.
want it to be true, yeah.
And so it's like every time I would walk into my office, there's Nick Cave with like... This was in the era when he had he's always had the long pulled back hair, but he also had a really bad mustache.
Right.
And so him and his really bad mustache are staring at me saying, "You have no excuse but to make words." And so it sort of got me started, but I've published 3 novels. My 4th one is coming out. I've written comics. I've published over a dozen short stories, and I still feel it. I still I thought I was over it, actually, until I tried something new. And the new thing was I was asked to teach a teen writer's workshop. And then it was, who am I to be telling these people how to write and what to, that was, for me, I never felt like more of an imposter than when I was trying to instruct other people who were just getting started.
So, dear listener, what we're talking about right now is something called imposter syndrome. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of talking about how when you're a creative person, you feel reluctance to identify as one professionally, even once you've become a professional. Certainly before you've been paid to do your work, if you're a writer, you feel like perhaps you're not a writer, you don't want to introduce yourself as a writer, so you say, "Oh, I'm an aspiring writer," or some nonsense like that. If you showed up, you went home, and you wrote, then you're a writer. If you went home and you watched TV, then you're a TV watcher, right? It's create yourselves through what you do.
That I don't like that quote.
Yeah.
That bugs me because isn't the I never get writer's block because isn't the whole creative process is you have valleys and mountains, right? It's
well, I think there's it sort of depends on how you define writer's block, right? For me, writer's block is not, oh my God, I don't know what to write. it's almost never, I know from the years I've been doing this, if I go and sit down at the keyboard, I will make words.
Yeah.
For me, writer's block is getting myself in front of the keyboard when everything else in your life is saying, yeah, but the lawn needs to be mowed, and oh, you didn't sleep well last night, and you normally write in the morning, so take this morning off. Like that to me is the block. It's more disruption of the routine that I use to create my words.
So let's talk about momentum for a second then, because that's sort of what you're getting into. There's a quote that I like, I can't remember who said it, about writer's block, that basically explained it, that writer's block is your subconscious telling you that you need to think about the story more, that it needs to process. And so when you go to the well and you try to bring up something great and there's nothing there, it's because it's still working. It's like the little spinning wheel on your MacBook, right? It's still got something to do before it can give you what you want. I prefer that, so I switch gears a little bit. But how do you... So you wake up in the morning, you haven't slept, you maybe went out to Calgary Expo and had too much whiskey the night before, and then what? How do you write anyway?
Do you usually recognize it?
Yeah, I sort of know what's going on and why I don't want to, and I mean, mostly it's there's very rarely a good reason not to write. Right. One of the few ones for me that where I accepted it and just didn't beat myself up about it was I changed jobs, and it completely changed. It demolished my routine. Oh yeah. And I had to rebuild a routine. Yeah, because routine helps you have a thinking space, like a framework to know when to, like when you're on autopilot, this is something I've done a million times, I know what to do, fine. So you think about something else while you do it, and it doesn't affect your productivity. I mean, and like people say you should be able to write through anything, and I had to deliver two. People also say democracy is the perfect system. Right? Well, I had to deliver 2 eulogies in quick succession, and that was writing. Yeah. That ate up all of my writing mind. There was no working on fiction while I was trying to do that. Yeah. So there's definitely times where I just feel like you shouldn't beat yourself up about it. But if you're coming home and you're just watching TV too many days in a row, or instead of writing in the morning, you're spending your time in the Tim Hortons lineup. Not that I know from experience. Right. Then that's another thing, right? Where there isn't a reason other than you're killing time and not putting work in. Right. Do you have the equivalent? Do you have artist block?
I definitely have, days where I guess I identify it as when you're sitting down to draw and just nothing's turning out correctly. Like I'm just not into anything I'm working on. It's a bit of a grind. So you've used the explanation of the translator, right? Yeah. Like you have an idea and then you get good at translating it onto the page, and that's an image. So can you maybe that's just what it is. We're translating onto the page, and the translator is a little tired, a little slow. I think it'll depend on your process. I don't know how it is. I haven't drawn regularly in probably 20 years, but for me, I always say you can fix bad words, but you can't fix no words. Oh. And so for a composition, if you start off on our wall, if you grow a mustache so that we can make a comparable photo. But if you're starting out with an artistic piece and your composition is wrong right from the get-go, it's going to be hard to fix that, right? Like if you have immediately, that's how I would view it. But if I've got words on the page, I can cut and paste those and move them around a lot more easily. I'm like, oh, this is thin. I can fill it out. I just need some more description here. This conversation goes on too long. Just snip, snip, snip. Like I can do that. Right. And that's why, for me, it's sort of even if I'm not feeling it, even if I think everything I do is garbage, I can fix it later. I can fix it in post because I know how I work too. And I think everyone has that place on their cycle where they get to the point and they're like, oh my God, I've tricked everyone up until this point. And this is the moment where it will be revealed that I don't know what I'm doing at all. And people will start calling me out. I've also noticed I've had those days before where I think everything is garbage. And when I come back a week later, I realize, no, this is fine. This is good. It was just the mental state I was in that day. I was just kind of down on myself. But coming back at it later, the work was like usable.
Right.
Yeah. Functionally, I cannot tell the difference between writing days when I felt I was in the groove and writing days where I struggled.
Yeah,
at
that's
all.
interesting.
Like because over the span of a book, it could take me 3 months to finish. It could take me a year to finish.
Then you have rewrites. You have some move around.
Yeah, and so I can never tell after the first draft is done what I was feeling and what I was struggling with. I actually think that the days when I'm feeling it and I'm in a groove, I feel like that's when I'm overindulgent, and those end up being the pieces where I need to.
Yeah, where the prose is too colorful and you have to cut.
I need to cut back rather than build up.
Yeah.
Normally my edits involve building up, but I think if I am in the groove, then those are the scenes where I need to trim back.
How to start? I'm hungry. I should get coffee. Coffee would help me think. But I should write something first, then reward myself with coffee. Coffee and a muffin. Okay, so I need to establish the themes. Maybe banana nut. That's a good muffin.
Now, you do a lot of world building. How do you know? So, for the dear listener who may be thinking about what we're talking about, when we're talking about world building, we're talking about all the things that aren't the story, that could be the story if you went there. So, there are plenty of towns you pass in Lord of the Rings that we don't know what happened there, but we could. And probably, in fact, we know for a fact that J.R.R. Tolkien knew what happened there for 200 years before anyone arrived. And that world building can get in the way of getting a story finished. And you have stories with a lot of world.
Well, world building is a similar problem to research.
Right.
In that it feels like work. It feels like you were doing the work. Like, I love it.
I had a deal like that yesterday.
But it feels like you're working, right? Because I'm building my world. I'm learning about what it was actually like to fight from horseback, all of these things. But for you guys, the work is putting the picture on the page, and for me, the work is putting the story on the page.
Yeah.
And so, it absolutely can. I come at world building from a Dungeons and Dragons background.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons and Marvel
both.
comic books are the two things most responsible or most to blame for me being a writer. And one of the things that they always sort of recommended for people building their own worlds when you were playing Dungeons and Dragons is you start small. You start that's why they always started in a central town so you only need to know this little bit. And as the characters start interacting with the world, this bit is interesting, so I'm going to flesh this little bit out more. And I think I'm a very organic writer. I'm what they refer to as a pantser. I write by the seat of my pants. I don't really do a lot of outlining ahead of time. So it'll be a throwaway line, and then to me that suddenly becomes something, and it becomes something I need to expand, and it becomes something important. I don't know usually everything going on in the world until I need to know it. I find it gets in the way of actually writing the story. I'm trying to write around all of these details.
So, myself and James Gillespie are working on a novel project right now, bouncing stuff back and forth, and I find in order to write forward, I constantly have to, because it's basically a fantasy setting, I have to reread all the little bits of color that we put in to figure out whether any of it is important later. Because I get caught putting too many weird words or weird phrases or references to places, and that old adage that if there's a gun in the first act, it better go off by the end. And how do you combat that?
I'm also co-writing a novel with a friend of mine, and she hates me when I say this. She's like, I just tell her that my brain just does that.
Right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And that is of no help.
Chadwick's brain.
But
that's the.
If I am working on a project largely without interruption, my subconscious remembers those things and carries them forward. If I take too long of a break, I need to go back.
So sometimes it just comes down to that momentum. If you keep the momentum, then you show up. How did you say that? You can fix.
You can fix bad words. You can't fix no words.
Can't fix no.
Well, you can fix no words by writing words.
Writing words. Oh, and so your career is born. Now you do something that a lot of other people, I think, and there was a few questions about it. I think you do it well. How do you manage getting the words on the page and getting yourself to your regular job?
I write in the margins of. I actually had a brief flirtation with writing full time when I was in between jobs about 5 years ago, and I found that I watched The Hobbit an awful lot. And
like the Ralph Bakshi one? Like
no, the first of the Peter Jackson ones, and it
Okay.
wasn't. And I enjoy the movie, but it wasn't because I loved the movie that I watched it all the time. It was because it was the movie that was upstairs. Like, that's how deeply lazy I became. I had hundreds of movies just down the stairs, but this one was already upstairs.
In the player.
In
fact,
the
I
player.
can just push play.
And I would get texts from my wife saying, "Are you watching The Hobbit?" And I wouldn't lie to her, and I would say yes. And then she would say, "I need you to go pick up apples."
Right.
Just to get me out and doing things. But
Right.
when I started my current job, I was trying to build up that new routine, and so I wrote pretty much my entire third book longhand on the bus, on my ride into work and my ride home from work, and I would wander around. And
So you're an author of mythic fiction. That sounds like a mythic thing to do.
Yeah.
Right?
I called it a book when I realized, like, my normal writing time, words weren't coming out, but on the bus words were, and they were only coming out longhand. So I used my normal writing times to transcribe what I'd been writing, and
Maybe
it
all the
almost
words
served as
were
kind of
there.
a first edit.
Maybe all the words were all there in the ether, but your body had to be going fast enough to get them.
Yeah. It's the equivalent of carrying around a sketchbook, right?
Yeah,
It's-
and I always have a notebook
Yeah.
with me, because that's usually how things start for me. Like, the bones of a book will start in a conversation that comes out seemingly out of nowhere while I'm out and about doing something else, and that's why I always want to have a notebook. And that's
I think more novels need to take a page from like what graphic novels and comics do, and in the very back of the book have like a photograph of that first scrap of paper, that first napkin where that first conversation had. Like,
Yeah.
this entire book came from this stained conversation.
I save almost every piece of my writing ephemera.
Yeah.
I have most of the post-its.
Much to the chagrin of your wife, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I've got like a bunch of plastic storage tubs in our leeward crawl space, and everything's all sealed up. But
Well, you know
it's
what,
not that
though?
I think that anyone will care about my archives, but it's like the book wouldn't exist without this, and so I don't want to get rid of it.
So I spent a little bit of time actually at a writing convention that you first told me about, When Words Collide.
Mm-hmm.
I met Kevin Anderson there, and Kevin J. Anderson, if you prefer. But he told us this great story. When you're talking about this ephemera, it made me think of this. Great story about when him and Brian Herbert were going and writing the Dune novels. How he got to go through the boxes because all those things were kept. All the little scraps of the trajectory of the story, from like early inception of the idea all the way through. And he found the piece in the box of notepaper. Apparently, Frank Herbert had this notepaper that he kept by the bed. So when he'd wake up in the middle of the night, he'd write an idea down, go back to sleep. He found the actual physical piece of paper where it said, "Damn the spice, right? Make Leto a good king," right? And it changed, like the entire universe of that world pivots on that one idea that was written on that little scrap. And he said it was kind of like finding a reliquary, like he just was holding this like piece of a saint,
Yeah.
right? So maybe one day, when
Maybe.
we're all dead, someone will be holding your scrap of paper, right? Where it said, "Mr. Bones Pizza, good villain," right?
But sire, we can't leave all this spice.
Damn the spice! Get out of there!
Tell us about Graveyard Mind. What's going on there?
Graveyard Mind, I think it was a reactionary novel in a way of me wanting to do something different than the Thunder Road Trilogy, but still something of a piece with what I enjoyed. So I looked at as Thunder Road was gaining momentum with early rejections. I'm like, well, what's going on with urban fantasy? Mostly it is written from first-person perspective. Mostly it has a woman as the protagonist, and mostly it is set in a place that is not Winnipeg.
Right.
And so I'm like, what is the one thing I will not compromise on? And that is, I want to set my books in Winnipeg because I love living here. I love writing about it. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try writing a novel first person for the first time. I'm going to try writing a novel. And I'd written women as protagonists in short stories, but never over the span of an entire novel, and never as the sole protagonist.
Right.
So that it was very much I need to do something different. But I also want it to feel like me. I don't really have a stake in branding. I want to work on what I want to work on.
Right.
And so, but I wanted it to feel like me.
Yeah.
And so it needed to be different, but it still needed to be me.
At the same bits.
And I feel like when I wrote my second book, Tombstone Blues, I wasn't done with Haunted Winnipeg. And that sort of got this idea of a necromancer who lived here, and that was kind of rattling around. The thing that you'll probably love this. The thing that made me write it, I was going to write something else as my next book. The thing that made me write it was a Todd Lockwood illustration.
Come on, really?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I went to World Fantasy Convention in Calgary. He was the artist guest of honor. And so he had the cover of that, of the program book. And it was a young woman with dark hair in a blue cloak, blue hooded cloak, but contemporary clothing. And that became my
That's your anchor image. You talk about doing this.
My sort of image of that is winter. That is my heroine.
Right.
And
dear listeners, when I said you talk about doing this, I pointed at Justin as if you could all see us, but you can't. Justin, tell us about how anchor images affect what you're doing. He found one in the world and then made a story around it.
Every once in a while, I do that too. You know, you have an idea for a character, for a world, or for a scene, and your mind kind of circles around that, and sometimes, actually it just happened, I recently just saw the Solo movie, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a certain character in the Solo movie that I realized has been a character I've been thinking about, like, for years. Oh my God, that's her. That's, like, who I've been thinking about, and this is her, like, personified. That's the girl that, like, I've been trying to come up with.
So someone got there first, or someone like helped you unlock the idea
somebody
further?
Somebody opened the door and showed me what was on the other side. And so now I have that anchor image.
Interesting. Okay, we have another question from the interwebs. This is fun. It feels like we're on a real radio show with call-ins, except the lag here is days and days.
You know what? You could tell people this is happening live.
This is happening live
there we go.
right now.
In your basement. We are there.
Yeah. So the question actually relates to what you just said, which is what made me think to ask it. How do you reconcile past work with new work? You just made a point of saying, like, I want it to feel like me, but I have to try something new. I have to do something different. What is that process like for you?
The hardest part for me was when I had to jump back into a series after there had been a lag in it. With the Thunder Road Trilogy, I wrote the second book immediately after I drafted the first one, because it showed up whole. It showed up as an entire novel in my head, and I was racing to get it on the page. That draft was done in, I think, 5 weeks.
Come on.
For that book. I wrote one line at the end of Thunder Road, and I immediately knew what the next book would be, and I had to do it. I'm like, I shouldn't be writing this until I sell book one, because I might be wasting my time. But if I don't do it, I don't think I can come back to it.
Right.
Well, then I was querying that book.
again.
Exactly. And then I was querying that book and, submitting that. And I'm like, in the meantime, I was drafting other things and working on other short stories. And then I sold the series. And now, after not thinking about Thunder Road in a substantial way for a couple of years, I had to write the third novel. I had to...
Right.
Like, first I had to go back and edit the second book, but I also had to write the third book and recapture that voice. I think I tried to find what the core of whatever it is. And again, like, you can fix bad words, you can't fix no words. So
right.
I leaned in very much to a caricature of my protagonist to get back to it, knowing that I could find him again.
Right.
So it led to my favorite editorial note of all time, which was, this book contains a staggering amount of profanity. And And I'm like, can I use that as a pull quote? Like, no, you may not.
No,
That's a
I
great
think
pull
that's
quote.
yeah. I'll give you that as a
But
pull quote.
it was from writing. I knew they were right.
Yeah.
But it was from the process of drafting that book in 100 to 500 word pieces on the bus.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you could tell when I hadn't been writing for a while, or I had written a lot in a while, because there'd be a spike in profanity when I'd started working on a chapter, and it would. I'm moving my hand again, like the listeners can see me. But
He's making a
but it would
graph
gradually
diagram
descend over time, and then there would be another spike where I hadn't been. You could tell I knew I hadn't been writing for a while, and so I'm like, I was trying to find the character again. And so for me, it was just getting the broad strokes. I don't feel I lose the broad strokes of who I'm writing about.
I have a theory about queries. So, dear listener, a query letter is basically when you sum up your novel in a sentence or so and say, hey, does anyone care? And you send that to agents and publishers. But you have to really boil it down and encapsulate it as simply as possible. Yeah. And the effort of making a query letter tells you that you know what your own book is about. Once you've sold it, when it's time to do book 2 or 3, you don't have to do a query. It feels so great because I already sold it. I don't have to worry about this, whatever. Do you think that, or have you ever found that the process of writing the query letter helps you understand your own book in a way that when you don't have to?
Absolutely. And I wish that I would have needed to write a query for the third book in the Thunder Road Trilogy, because I wrote 30,000 words in the wrong direction.
Right.
Because in my brain, as I was conceptualizing what this was going to be and how I was going to end it, I wanted to end the series on a weird Western note. I wanted it to feel like a Joe Lansdale episode of Batman the Animated Series, where you go back in time and it's Jonah Hex for some reason.
Right.
Like that. I wanted that, and it was wrong. It was the wrong way to end the series. It was just my authorial intent getting in the way of what needed to be done, and I realized that this is a kaiju movie. That's what this book needs to be. But I had to write 30,000 words in the wrong direction.
So do you ever find, I find this when I'm working on stuff, and I know, well, we've talked about this, Justin, you and I, that sometimes your brain switches to a new interest while you're still working on a current project. And you start putting a bunch of effort and time into it before you realize, oh, actually, that's all for a different thing. And I have to break it off and put it there and wait till I can go there. Are you working on a Weird West thing too?
I can't remember if I was at the time. I had an idea for a story that it actually became a comic script. I realized that it wasn't right as fiction, and that every moment that I was writing down in that story, I was seeing too visually, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I didn't realize that actually until I'd written my first comic script, understanding why I couldn't write this as a book.
Right.
Because it wasn't a book.
Because it was too visual.
Yeah. And just like the beats weren't working on the page. I couldn't make the prose flow in the way that I was envisioning it. And I did my first comic script for Donovan Yashik for Space Pig Amadeus.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's what I'm trying to do.
This is before the first issue of the comic book hit the stands in 1968. It's a classic depiction of good versus evil.
One of the things that I find is a difference, and we can all discuss this a little bit because we all use words and we use pictures, although sometimes you make Justin Schaff do it for you.
He's fantastic. Hire him.
He is quite excellent.
If you're looking for a comic illustrator.
Is that illustration has this power to show you a whole bunch of things at once, and the reader sort of decodes it on their own speed. Like you can show, you can have an elaborate fight scene, say, where you have a midground, foreground, and background where all these things are happening at the same time. And you can see it all and sort of absorb it all at once. But if you were writing it as prose, you'd have to get to each thing a paragraph at a time, which would change the pace. Comics treat space for time differently than books treat space for time. When you make a paragraph break, right, it's the next idea. Yeah. But when you have a panel break, you could have a year between that, or you could have a second between that, or a millisecond between that. It's very different. I just rambled. Discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's fair. I think actually that's one of the reasons why I became a reader as quickly as I did, I was sick before I started school, and my mom bought me a bunch of comics when I was in the hospital to keep me amused.
You're like the villain in Unbreakable.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
How many days in your life have you been sick, Justin?
Not too many.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
This is
Oh, no, there we go.
I've definitely broken some bones.
Okay,
Yeah.
phew.
Yeah.
Phew. No train
But,
accidents in our immediate future.
But I realized as my mother was reading the comics to me aloud, I was following the story faster than it could be read aloud, because I was getting the story from the pictures, and so hearing the dialogue out loud was getting in the way. Like I was so frustrated that I wanted to keep moving forward, and that drove me to teach myself how to read.
So I'm a little bit mad for the idea of semiotics and how like a symbol stands in for meaning. And Noam Chomsky has this, his whole theory of language is that language is, okay, this will be a very truncated, bad summation of Chomsky. Internet, please do not come after me for this. But essentially that language is fully formed in a child and is simply revealed to them, so that it's almost a process of memory, not learning. Right? And so it's one of the reasons why they believe, and by they I mean like linguists and reading theorists and reading development people believe that when you put pictures in kids' books, it allows them to read and understand words much more rapidly than when you don't, because they're remembering almost like a genetic memory of what this representation is in accordance to language. Right? Cool. Yeah, it's crazy. It's this is just like a tiny little sliver of a very big concept. But
well, I mean, certainly there's tons and tons of visual dictionaries these days for kids, right? Where it's got the picture and it's got the word, and I mean you look at all the board books for newborns, and it's very much like you're giving them a texture and a word, you're giving them an image and a word. Yeah. And I think absolutely then just trying to, I could write a paragraph trying to explain an apple to a 2-year-old, but it's not going to work.
Right. Exactly.
How come there's not more silent comics? I was thinking this on the weekend. Like we were talking about the power of imagery, and there's such amazing illustrators out there, but there's very few silent
more production errors, like that famous issue of G.I. Joe.
That's right, where they just didn't.
There was a script for that, but they didn't put any words in.
So there is. I'm not big on most of the Marvel events, except the young person in me still enjoyed Atlantis Attacks. But they did a thing. I don't remember exactly when, but I was an adult when I read it. Where Marvel did a thing called Nuff Said, where they did 1 month. I think I may be misunderstanding or misrepresenting it, but it was 1 month where all the Marvel books had no text in them.
Cool.
Right? And so they were all silent stories.
Do you think they just had to fire a bunch of writers and then they came up with a great way to spin it?
Well, it begs the question then, or it really reveals the question in comics, are artists writing, but just using a different set of symbols than letters? And I think the answer is completely revealed by that, which is yes.
Yes.
Right? You can abstract TH, E and have a the, right? Or I can have a the anything by drawing the picture, right? And the is implied.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I think, and I don't know that I realized necessarily how important that side of the collaboration of, comic artist and comic writer was until I started making comics.
Right.
Right. And until you start, like, you can have it explained to you, but until you were in there and trying to build a book and collaborate with somebody.
Well, tell us a little bit then, since you're on the subject of Midnight Man, and how you came to be working with Justin, the other Justin, as I like to think of him.
Like most of my work, Midnight Man started as a prose character. There was an anthology called Tesseract's 19 Superhero Universe, and one of the editors had already bought a story from me for another anthology, and he cornered me at a convention and he said, "You're going to write me a superhero story, aren't you?" And that's as good as you're going to get in terms of a guaranteed sale when an editor who's published you before says, "I want something from you."
Right.
And so I said, "Yeah," and I didn't even think about what
He solicited you for text.
Yes. And so I didn't even think about what it was going to be. I loved superheroes in comic form. I hadn't given much thought to writing a prose version. And it took me a long time to come up with a character, but he got his start as a prose, and he's sort of a love letter to the old pulp heroes like the Shadow, the Spider, and Green Hornet, and all that. So he is a relatively normal guy whose day job is as an undertaker, and he hunts necromancers and the undead. And that was what I got started with, and I'm like,
So how did you find Justin Schaff, and how did you work together? Because you live in different cities.
We do.
You had,
and this is where going to cons is a great thing. I came to know about Justin because I backed the Kickstarter for Canadian Corps, a September 17 Productions book, and I liked his art. And the whole concept of it was hitting me right in my Alpha Flight feels.
Right.
And
yeah,
so,
Andrew Lorentz, right?
Yeah.
He's
Andrew's a great
totally
guy.
Alpha Flight love letter book.
So Justin and Justin has done some work for Space Pig Amadeus, and so I kind of got to know his work from work he'd already done with people I knew, and so I think we tabled near each other a couple of times at conventions and just started chatting, and I didn't feel like Midnight Man was necessarily his thing from what I had seen, but I could envision the book that he would draw, and I wanted to see it.
I think they're the best pages he's ever done. I saw the raw page. He showed me the.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Like it was just one of those. This isn't something you have done before, but I can see it, and I know it's going to be boss. And I want it to exist, and the only way for it to exist is for me to pay you to draw it.
Right.
And so I queried him through his website, and I said, "Oh, hey, it's me, and we met at this con, and I've got a project, and and this is where listening to your podcast and going to cons and talking to people, it gave me a bit of a language for how to do this. I'm like, he's not going to have time to do a full book. Right. I don't have money to do a full book. Let's do 6 pages. Here's what my budget looks like.
Right, and then work backwards from there.
And then we found an accord and got rolling.
And that 6-page thing, as Justin, or Chasing Art, we'll just call you Chasing now so we don't confuse the Justins. All right? So as Chasing Artwork here knows, doing a short project proves whether or not a long project is possible. Yeah. If you start a long project, it can be the death of the project.
For a lot of people.
So
even 6 pages, I think a lot of fledgling artists don't realize how much work it goes into 6 pages.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't realize how much work would go into a 6-page script.
Right.
Because I'd never written to that length before. Yeah. And by and large, when I read monthly comics, I'm reading the full 22-page story, and even then, usually that is a story drawn out over 4 to 6 issues these days.
Yeah, it's way hard. Well, I mean, it's like the way a short story is a
completely different beast.
Different beast than a novel. A little short vignette story in comics. Oh, man. Because you only got, depending on how you lay it out, you're going to end up either with, in 6 pages, 3 2-page spreads. Mm-hmm. So that means no reveal, or less reveals, I should say, in the midpoint of the story. Or if you, have it organized properly, you're at the end, there's no punchline because the last page of the story is also in a 2-page spread. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
it was started doing
it took me
panel math in my head right now.
I think it took me 1.5 years to crack my first 6-page script. And that was the one that I wrote for Space Pig. And unfortunately Donovan was very patient with me.
Right.
But it took me that long to find a process, to realize what a comic script was, because they're so idiosyncratic.
Yeah.
Right? It's about, I need to be able to communicate what I want on the page to the artist.
Right.
And so that could be, I would probably write a different script for you than I would for Justin.
Yeah.
Because you tend to use fewer panels on a page.
Right. Although lately I've been obsessed with 9-panel grids, so I have a whole bunch of those coming up.
But it was some of that was, and I didn't know who my artist was going to be, so I had to okay, well, how do I want to tell a story?
Oh, that's hard, yeah. If you don't know who the artist is, it's, really hard to do.
I started, I bought comics. I didn't really care about the Death of Wolverine as an event, but I bought it because they were including Charles Soule's scripts at the back of the book, so I could look at his script, and I'm like, okay, well, this might not be standard, but this is a script that is acceptable for Marvel.
Yeah.
And now I can look at the art and compare and see what was done. And so it just gave me that baseline for how to structure a script and get going. And I think then it took me about, the first year was trying to figure out how to do a comic script, and then it took me 6 months to get it down from 8 pages to 6 pages.
I know this book will drive people crazy. Well, let's hope so. The movie comes out next month.
Yeah, I'm often frustrated with people who are authors who believe comics are easy to write, and so then arrive into the comic writing scene, and I've had to work away from a few of those people who are convinced that they've got it all figured out because, hey, if I can write 700 pages, I can write 22 pages. Yeah. But it's a very different beast, right? Yeah. And training people one verb per character per panel is seems to be the hardest thing to teach a person.
Yeah. Well, and even we did 3 pages together for the Midnight Man magazine.
Yeah, yeah.
And
we did it differently.
We did that Marvel method.
Yeah, we did
it. And that was another challenge for me because I would print out your pages, and I would try to script over top of them just on 8x11 printed pieces of printer paper, so trying to make sure that what I was trying to say would fit in that space.
Right. So, dear listener,
I was way overwriting.
I'll give you some context here. So, I've known Chadwick for a long time and been a fan of his writing for a long time. Actually, knew you before even the first Thunder Road came out.
That's right. Yeah.
And you told me about this Midnight Man character forever ago, and probably when you were first doing that story. And I just thought he was really cool. And Chadwick sent me some original concept art. I don't know who did that.
My friend Kevin Madison in Calgary.
Right.
He's done a bunch of Thunder Road art for me, and he just likes drawing the character. So he will occasionally. I'll wake up in the morning and there's a new Thunder Road illustration. Right. He's like, here you go, enjoy.
And I thought, man, this guy was really cool, or this character was cool. What can I do for it? And then you said I have an anthology coming out, and I said something along the lines of, I don't have time to work from somebody's script, but if you let me draw 3 pages the way I want and then write something to it, I can fit it in as a fun thing around what I'm already doing. Yeah. So we did not follow regular comic rules to get that thing together.
But I love how it turned out. It was such a fun experience to, again, not have full control over the story and to I knew that there was a story there, but we didn't talk about, you didn't tell me what your intentions were.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I pantsed that.
Yeah.
And I did 3 pages as 9-panel grids, and I told myself I am not going to think too much about what the story is. I'm just going to do each panel one at a time. Yeah. Which is not usually how I do comics either. So I told myself I'm going to do it, and we're going to do it just as a trade. Chadwick said he'd write a story for me if I did some panels for him. Then I'm going to also try to do something in a way that I don't normally do, try to learn a little, try to do it a little. And man, it was fun.
Yeah. And I think my first 3 drafts were just me writing around those panels, trying to figure out what the story was. And then it was me trying not to get in the way of your art. I would write, and it's hard too when you've got a character who is written in the first person and tends to narrate what's going on. So I kind of had to divorce him from his prose version a little bit, because he absolutely would be describing what he's seeing, but I don't need to do that because you've done it. So I had to get down to the core of what he was trying to say. And I don't need to be talking about a door creaking open because we can see that it's open.
And there's a weird podcast connection here too, because I did the 9 panels because we've been looking at the development of Infinite Universe, pardon me. So Stephen and Lyndon's book, which is a lot of 9-panel grids, and they've been on the podcast. And so that was in my head. And then Lyndon was doing lettering, and then when you needed it lettered, I said, well, I know someone that can do it quick. And so then he came in, and so there's this weird super pulp science DNA sort of threaded through this whole thing, which is why it's a special story for me.
Well, and frequent contributor to Super Pulp Science, Sam Biko, was my editor for the script that I did with Justin. So
Now, Justin, well, so there's, dear listener, it seems clear here that if you want to get stuff done, you need to find a crew of people who like working on stuff. And Justin, what he described, what we did, what Chadwick and I just did, it's how you and I basically work regularly.
Usually.
I just let you go. Or more or less, you say, I already went.
Yeah.
And then you say, hey, can you find some words to match this?
Well, and I think that goes back to starting out. If I came to anybody with an idea and nothing to back it up, they have there's nothing to go off of there. Like, ideas are worthless, like we say often, but like once you have something finished, then we have something to talk about. So I still kind of have that mentality of I'm not going to come to you with just a raw idea. I'm going to start finishing things and then bring you in to go from there.
And then we play to your strengths. We play to each other's strengths a little bit more that way. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very fun episode of Super Pulp Science, where we talk about how genre gets made. We've been here with our very special guest, Chadwick Ginther. You can check out his new book, Graveyard Mind, which is out
in July.
July.
But if we're really lucky, fingers crossed, I might have copies at FanQuest end of June.
And FanQuest is
June 23rd, 24th.
June 23rd and 24th. We will all see you there. All right. See you guys. Join the fight. Make comics.